Hey, it's Drybear. Today is a historic day because after 2 years of legal battles, discussions, and tons of hot debates, Blizzard Activision King has been officially acquired by Microsoft and Xbox, which means a lot of things for gamers in general, but also means a lot for everything outside of these companies too. If you didn't know, 2 years ago, Microsoft was gunning to acquire this conglomerate of companies and try to move them inside of the Xbox umbrella, but Sony stood up and said, no, this is going to be a monopoly. It's too much. It's too far reaching. It can't happen. So there's a lot of legislation that went by in the US as well as the UK primarily, wondering if this is even going to be legal, if this is something that can happen. And Sony was primarily worried that taking one of the biggest franchises that even exists on all platforms like Call of Duty from Activision and putting it under Microsoft, Sony was worried that it would stop being sold on Sony's PlayStation in general. And this, after a lot of compromises, discussions, and some well-documented legal proceedings, it has finally gone through. Microsoft Xbox has acquired Blizzard Activision King, which means they now own all of the IPs that are under that umbrella, and it means a lot of new opportunities for the IPs that didn't get released underneath the IP registration for Blizzard Activision. Now, Xbox boss Phil Spencer has mentioned that this isn't going to be a bridge for them to start monopolizing the things that go up on Xbox and through the Game Pass on Windows and beyond. And it's something that was a big discussion point in the proceedings to make sure that they don't. And they actually had to make some concessions and some compromises to give up streaming rights. And they had promised, at least for a while, to continue publishing all of their titles that currently exist on PlayStation on their competitors' platforms so that things can keep moving forward. This means a lot of really cool things for games that hadn't been released before, or IPs that had been owned either by King, by Activision, or by Blizzard, or by the conglomerate between them, that now is going to be available for new publishing. And Phil Spencer, as well as others at Xbox, have mentioned that part of this acquisition, they do want to revive some of the old IPs that had been owned and been left alone. And even Phil Spencer had mentioned that all of the teams that are currently working on multiple Call of Duties every single year, he would like to see those, some of them, pare back their efforts and start releasing new titles, new content, new games, rather than just churning that same engine out over and over and over. Now on screen, I have all of the IPs that had just been sitting in the back burner. Some of these are very big fan favorites. People have mentioned Crash Bandicoot as one of the ones they'd like to see revived and brought forward. Obviously, we have things like Phantasmagoria. We have SWAT in here, down here, Tenchu, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and even things like Spyro and Space Quest as IPs that had been sitting dormant because no one owned the rights and weren't actually doing anything with them. Now with M&A in general, it's hard to know exactly what's going to take place. There could be a very hands-on approach with Microsoft Game Studios and Xbox getting very involved with these studios, telling them exactly what they have to do and what they can't do. And from that standpoint, things could change dramatically. But in acquisitions, there could be a very hands-off approach where it just says, we want to guide the general direction, but you guys keep doing what you're doing. And I think the big eyes right now are on what's going to happen to Game Pass with the new IPs that have been acquired, and also what's primarily going to happen with Blizzard, because Blizzard has been kind of their own proprietor for a long time in their own little ecosystem. I mean, Activision acquired them. They had King involved with mobile, but in general, Blizzard is kind of stuck to their guns in their own little bit. So does this mean that World of Warcraft is going to come to Game Pass? And if you have a Game Pass subscription, you don't have to pay your monthly WoW sub? Does this mean that there's going to be more mobile opportunities for Microsoft and Xbox acquiring King, one of the longtime biggest mobile creators in the space? And also, what does this mean for internal dev teams that are, from a public perception at least, not hitting their numbers, right? Since it's going to be a public process, there's going to be reviews, obviously. If there are things that are being done that aren't being done well, what does this mean for the future of those studios? And I think a lot of people are wondering specifically around things like Diablo Immortal, Diablo 4, and people that own the company now. It seems like there's rumors that Bobby is going to be stepping down at the end of the year, and in coming January, Q1 for 2024, that there's going to be new process, new leadership, new movements going forward. So all eyes are on them to see, can they make good on the promises that they've made? Do we feel like there's still going to be not a monopoly, that they're going to honor those promises from the legal agreements that they had gone through with and still put titles onto PlayStation? Is this the start of a monopoly or things that might go down a darker path? And what happens to some of the games that have been left alone for a long time, or some of the games that have lived on their own island for too long? Does World of Warcraft finally come to console? Does it finally make its way onto Game Pass, where it's more accessible to more gamers in a way that might hurt Blizzard's internal revenue, but generate more interest in gaming overall as people gain access to these kinds of games? Let me know what you think down below. Leave a comment. I'll see you on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content. Link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.